Thank you. The question from table 2 is, where is the 1 billion coming from, and will it be affected by Brexit?
I'll answer that. Very good question. The funding comes from central government, it comes from private enterprise and partners, and some of it's managed through the Black Country Local Enterprise Partnership, which has partners funding as well. The way it works is funding is, say, money is available, so the combined authority has money. We have to have a project ready to roll, and we have to have a detailed business plan with costings before we can apply, and then we apply for money to fund that project. When it's approved, that money is then ring-fenced. So to answer your question, just under the 449 million for the Metro, for example, the money is funded by Transport for West Midlands, which is funded by central government. So it's all allocated. It won't be affected by Brexit. The only fear we have is HS2, which is obviously under review, because HS2 will be very important for the Black Country, for communicating with London, for people setting up businesses in the area, like HSBC has moved its head office up to Birmingham because it's central. So hopefully that answers your question.
Is some of it taxpayer raised by tax, Angus?
Well, some of the money the council puts in itself, we're expected to put part in, and that's borrowed money. So it's not rates, it's not your money. Your money comes in and that's spent on services to the borough.
Sorry, what's HS2?
Sorry, high-speed train coming up from London to Birmingham. Oh, right. Yeah. Well, in Curzon Street in Birmingham, it's all flat where the GPO used to be, or post office.
Sorry, so you mentioned the £1 billion, but you actually only said that half of that, which has been allocated to the Metro. So, but what you also said was that you have to actually apply for the funding. So you don't have the £1 billion for this yet. You've got to apply for it before these things happen.
So just to clarify for those in the room who might not have heard, that's, Angus, you talked about half of the £1 billion. Could you explain where the other half is going? And the other bit then, Kester, I can't see your name, was?
Well, we've been told that there's £1 billion there waiting to be spent, but that's not actually there yet because the application hasn't gone in for it. So how much is actually there?
Right, the just under £1 billion is multiple projects. So it's Briley Hill Township, Dudley Township, Black Country Museum, that's getting 30 million, the Institute of Technology, which is where the Freightliner depot is, Very Light Rail, and other multiple projects, which Very Light Rail and Metro in Dudley is now started. So if you, Castlegate Island, they're building the supporting wall to bring the Metro up to Castle Hill. That started about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So all that money, just under £1 billion, is allocated to multiple projects, which will happen over the next 2 to 3 years.
And what I can tell you is that we have one of our experts today, Vicky there at the back, has a presentation and some detailed information about all the regeneration stuff. So we're going to be hearing a lot more about that in a bit more time, in a little bit more. I'm going to hand over now to Richard for the second question.
Thanks very much. So our question is, what can be done to attract young people and young families to be involved in development and decision making, to want to go into town centres and to feel safe and not threatened and overwatched while they're there?
Just a small one, that one.
I think that's one of the answers we're hoping to get out of this process. Some insight into that. We do quite a lot of work to engage with young people. So we have young health champions, we have a youth council, and so, for example, when we were developing the Borough Vision, we engaged with the youth council, with some schools to get their views, but I can't answer your question. I don't know the answer to the question. I think young people will be able to give us some insight into that, but we are hoping that that's one of the things you can help us through this process.
If I can just add to that, on the safety aspect, then you've heard that the police numbers are now increasing. What the council's done is we've gone to the Police and Crime Commissioner in Birmingham and said, we will fund 6 PCSO officers. Will you match fund that? And they've agreed to do that. So we all have, 2 more police officers on the streets. Their job will be to be visible. We can't really do that for a non-PCO, i.e. a proper policeman, because it takes 2 years to train them. A PCO we can have next month kind of thing, or in a few months' time. So it's starting to be addressed.
Great, thank you. Moving on to the next table, Diane.
Our table was really concerned about the turnover of shops in the town centres. So shops turning up and then very quickly closing. So we wanted to ask, do you think that the business rates are too high?
It's a difficult question, that is, because if it's based on a rateable value, and I think shops up to a sort of annual rateable value of about £12,000 a year don't pay business rates at all. And it's one of the things that we're looking at in the council. We haven't actually received, as far as I know, any money from business rates yet, but that's about to happen, and it's an area we're looking at, how the rates are set. So at the moment, certainly have that as an input to this session. I can't give you a straight answer.
Okay, thank you. Table 5, Francis.
Hi, yeah, so, oh God, that's loud. We had a question about the pop-up shops, and it's kind of a question and also a suggestion at the same time. So the question is, what is the kind of your vision for how the pop-up shops will be used and how they will be allocated to people who want them? And our table had a really interesting suggestion about the idea that in terms of thinking about job opportunities in our town centres, they're often available but not easy to find or access. So the idea for a pop-up shop could be that once or twice a month, local businesses use that space to advertise jobs or training opportunities. So it kind of has a multiplier effect of telling people what's happening in town centres and giving those opportunities. But yeah, the question was really about how you foresee the pop-up shops being used and who would get to access them.
I think that's a really good question. We are going to have some experts, I think, on town centres, aren't we, coming over the next few days. I'm not a town centre expert. So hopefully you'll get an answer to the question about how that would work. I think that's a fantastic suggestion. I don't know what Angus thinks, but I think that's a really, really good suggestion that table made.
Yeah, I think also what we're trying to do is change the way town centres function and build more flats and apartments so that you've got people who either work locally or they might commute to Birmingham using the metro, and they'll come back at night and there'll be bars and restaurants there, and they'll spend their money there, and they'll spend their money in the local shops. So we're trying to increase the population, the living population in the towns.
Okay, next table, Liz.
Thanks. So our table was really interested, and it's both of you, I think, about this process. And the question is, how might the same people from this people's panel be involved in follow-up after these weekends, right through to 2030, to ensure follow-through, continuity, holding to account, whoever is in power?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question, and I've done, as you can tell by my accent, I'm not from around these parts, and I've done work in other parts of the country using this sort of approach. One of the best things that comes out of it is a group of people passionate about making a difference themselves and holding us as organisations to account. So, to be honest, one of the reasons I wanted us to apply for this process was because I hoped that something like that would come out of it. I think that will be up to you, the people in this room, to decide if you want that to be one of your recommendations. But I think, personally, that's one of the real strengths of using this way of working.
The other area is that, as residents, you have the opportunity to come along to full council meetings. There's a public gallery up there. You can table questions to the council through your local ward councillor, ask him to raise this issue in council. The cabinet members, which meet sort of monthly, they're open to the public, so you can listen into decision making being made. There's also all the scrutiny committees like adult, children's, place. These scrutiny committees are open to the public. And if you look on the website, you'll see what the agendas are, what the topics are, and you're entitled to attend that. There's also community forums. I think every quarter we hold in each sort of collective ward, about, say in Stourbridge, for example, we have community forums every quarter for the public to come along. And that's more around local issues, but you can vent your anger or, contribute by suggesting the way things work. And quite often at those community forums, there's always 2 police officers there representing the police who can, you can ask questions to. So the council is fairly open for residents to come along and see what's going on.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have the lovely June.
Thank you. Right, our most prominent concern is, right, we get £1 billion. We need, how can we be sure that that money is spent and not wasted? For instance, doing things that are never going to be used. We need to plough that money in as best as possible. How are we going to be ensured that that's going to happen?
That's a very, very good question. I think certainly this afternoon, Vicky can go into more detail in some of the projects. But the projects, there's a lot of research done on, if you take the metro, there's a lot of research done on, how many people are going to use it. And as already been mentioned this morning, along the metro corridors, there's going to be housing, there's going to be businesses, there's got to be doctor surgeries, there's got to be more schools. All that is forecasted into that project, if you like, in detail, right down to a wall being built and costed, and the reason for the wall being built and costed. And there's also, if you take a metro station, you would have signage, which has already been mentioned this morning. So there's a budget for spending money on signage to make the place look nice. So it is costed in detail, and it's not going to be wasted on some random thing that won't work. If you look at the investment, another investment is just under 30 million in the Black Country Museum. Now that's stimulating tourism. It's trebled, quadrupled in the last few years. And it's drawing people in, and those people are going to be spending money locally and staying in local hotels, like maybe the Copthorne or whatever. So it is really, and it's scrutinised, so it's debated. The opposition party will ask, deep questions. Is it necessary to spend this money, and is it going to happen on time? So there's a lot of scrutiny going on, which is what I mentioned the scrutiny committees earlier. So it's a very robust process.
The thing is, like Ross brought this point up, sorry. In Dudley, there's the Coronation Garden where the memorial is, and they built an amphitheatre. Yeah, so renovated behind where the college, that new college building is, never been used. And then years ago, they paved all the town with new paving. I can remember that quite well. Didn't last 5 minutes because people were falling over, etc., etc., and it all had to be replaced. That was a waste of money.
I think one of the additional, in addition to what Angus has said, one of the reasons that we're doing this work is so that we can check stuff out with the public about, because there's the projects that are going to be happening, but there's something about how they're delivered in ways that local communities want them to be, so local communities will use them. So, for example, Vicky will probably tell you that the Metro, the Transport and West Midlands will build the metro to a certain point, and then, but how people get to the stop will be up to the council. And we want to understand from local communities what will enable them, what does that need to be like so that they will want to use, you will want to use the metro. So I would say that there's a very rigorous process around business plans, but in addition to that, one of the reasons we're doing this work is that we want to understand from you how we can do this in ways that you feel will be beneficial and won't be a waste of money. Sorry.
Just very quickly, there's another element to it, and that's dependencies. So if the metro is coming up all the way up into Brierley Hill Town Centre, Brierley Hill Town Centre has got to be regenerated. And it's, you know, so otherwise people come and say, well, what's this place, you know? So there's a lot of dependencies and all these multiple projects happening and coming together to, you know, that's all being planned.